Get Retreat is a day where people try things that they have never tried before. You have women doing their first weighted workouts, kettlebells, and different things like that. And it's just really about fostering a community and letting people know that, hey, we want to see you win. We want to see you do well, and just giving permission and giving a space for that.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 203 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am excited that you are here. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the show. If this is your 203rd time, welcome back. I just want to actually give a shout out to Alison MacArthur and Chris Wilson for being two other people who reached out to me saying that they have listened to or had listened to all 200 episodes when I gave that shout out in the Knox Robinson episode. I did shout out a few other people during that episode 200, but if you missed that and you have listened to all 200, please let me know. I'd love to give you a shout out. Now, today I guess I should tell you about last week first. So last week we had Alex Will on the show, who is just a wonderful human being who is great at marketing, at kind of encouraging others to do their thing, to be their own best selves. And we did kind of dive in a little bit into breaking down systemic racism, how we can get more Black people involved in running. But also it was just a really interesting episode to learn about Alex's story and how she continues to help others. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. Today we have Takia McClendon on the show, and I'm excited to bring her on the show. This is the final episode in a row that I will be focusing a little bit, only a part of it, probably about a third of the episode, on kind of dismantling racism. However, that doesn't mean I'm just going to completely lose everything from now and go straight back to kind of how things were before everything came to the forefront earlier this year. But I did want to take a bit of a break and lighten up the podcast after this episode. So we will be kind of having some more lighthearted episodes for a few weeks to let us process, to let us think through what's going on. And then we will bring some more deeper discussions back in a few weeks' time. So I am excited to let you get to know Takia. She has just really made a big difference, particularly in the city of Philly, which many of you know. My heart definitely is still in Philadelphia. And she is one of the co-founders of City Fit Girls. You're going to hear a bit more about that today. You're also going to hear about how we can make changes within the way that we are celebrating people of color and helping to raise awareness of what's going on and thinking about things differently. So we're going to talk about that. But I particularly wanted Takia on, not only because Alison Desir mentioned her and told me specifically that she was a great inspiration, and I agreed, but she's very into kind of empowering other women, helping us to grow as people, which is not as easy to find as it sounds and should be. She really wants people to succeed, wants people to feel a part of something, and you're going to hear a lot about that today. So I think you should enjoy this episode with Takia, and I am excited for you to get to know her. We are also going to be highlighting another Black-owned business in the episode. I will pause the interview for a minute just to tell you a bit about our brand. And I think that is about it, my friends. I want to just thank one of our sponsors, and then we'll be right to the episode. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, my friends, I told you about the previous coupon code. We have now changed that. So for those of you who have been a fan of Tracksmith for way longer than I have, from the very early days of the brand, I know there's many of you listening who are those first supporters of the brand, I do now have a coupon code for you. I know you were feeling left out before. So if you use code FORREAL15, that's FORREAL 15, you can get $15 off your first purchase of $75 or more. Now, I've told you about how much I love the clothes. I've told you about how I'm always wearing the Twilight tank, the Horizon tank, the session shorts all day long in just my daily life, so that I can switch from mom mode to exercise mode really quickly. They're really cute clothes. They're simple. and just really effective, made of nice materials. I've told you about all that stuff, but I've been starting to tell you a bit about some of the other things Tracksmith is doing beyond just kind of those basic being a brand that provides products for us kind of things. They have actually now created a run commute set of clothes, which are fantastic. I love the idea that Tracksmith is encouraging people to run to get from point A to point B, as it kind of should be, rather than us driving to the gym or driving to work when it's not very far away. Now, as people are starting to get back to work and starting to travel more to their workplaces that are locally, this is a great time for you to be using their Run Commute collection. They have thought really hard about this stuff. It is functional. It is great quality, as with all the Tracksmith stuff. And I really think you're going to enjoy it. If you are someone who runs to work or has the potential to run to work, this is the great opportunity for you to give it a try. So be sure to check out their Run Commute selection of clothes there. And then also the amateur support program. I don't think I've mentioned this to you on the podcast yet, but they are now doing a support program for people who are going for the US Olympic track and field trials. They will give people a quarterly gear stipend, a membership to their Hair AC club, mentorship, competition support, and more. That's just for people who are up and coming, those athletes who are well on their way. And it's those who are focusing on the US trials and are just, putting in the work every day. The people who are digging down deep to find the time within their own lives, but still trying to work a full-time job or have a family or whatever. I really think this is fantastic what they are doing. And I think you should read up a bit more on that if you have not already. Now, one final reminder, you can get $15 off your first purchase of $75 or more by using code 4REAL15. That's $15 off your first purchase of $75 or more using code 4REAL15. Takia, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running for Real podcast. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And as I mentioned to you before we started recording, Alison Detier was the one who recommended you, and a wonderful person herself. And it's, I know that whoever she says, for me to interview would be an absolutely great person to have on. And so I'm excited to dig in deeper. But let's start with kind of the bigger things that you're known for. One being the co-founder of City Fit Girls with Kiara Smalls. So tell us, what is City Fit Girls to start with?
So City Fit Girls is actually a training and fitness community for women. Mm-hmm. We officially started it in 2013. So it actually started out of Kiara's fitness journey. And so we were working out, just the two of us, and running and doing all these different activities. And it was also kind of around the time where Instagram kind of became more popular. And so we started to share what we were doing on Instagram, and then friends and family are like, well, we want to work out with you guys. Oh, and so, cool. So we would meet. And you said you lived in Philly, right?
Yeah. Actually, I didn't tell you this before, but there's literally a giant picture of Philadelphia on my wall right here. So yes, I very much am tied to it.
But you're familiar with the Art Museum steps?
Yes.
And so to other folks, they'll call them the Rocky Steps, if that rings a bell. So we would do workouts on the Art Museum steps, and we're just taking pictures. And it started with just the two of us, and then the next week there's 4, and then 10.
That's so cool.
And it just became this big thing where people just wanted to come and work out with us. And so eventually we rented a studio. Kiara had to end up getting like her fitness instructor certification. So we had to make sure that we were all clear to actually be working out with people. And then we operated as doing just like group fitness workouts in Fairmount, so by the Art Museum, and then also up in Germantown, which is a northwest neighborhood in Philadelphia, and then started to expand. And so we actually did group fitness for a while before we started running. And so we didn't introduce our running club until later in 2014. And that's kind of the thing that we have become known for more than anything else.
So you mentioned that you started with Kiara's journey. So were you already kind of exercising, and like she was a friend and you kind of said, come join me, or how did that come about?
No, we were accountability partners. That's it. And so
you starting new as well at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so my background was actually in political science, and I had really no interest in working out. And she was doing some more like social work, criminal justice kind of stuff. And so we started to work out, and we were on this journey really together. Yeah. But when I went to grad school, all of my research was in food insecurity and food deserts. And so I started to kind of make the connection between people having access to fresh foods and like nutrition and health, and then kind of bridge that gap into fitness.
Yep.
And so that's actually how I started running. I did a 5K for the Run for Hunger.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't my technically first, but it was probably the first one that I actually trained for and actually cared about and had that connection. And so when I did that 5K, it's just like, wow, this is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could probably get more people into doing this as well, and hopefully they would enjoy it. And so that's the story.
And how
we got off the ground.
Yeah. How did that feel when you were kind of, early in this process yourself, but then getting people kind of coming to you saying, like, essentially, like, teach me your ways and like, help me did that feel like any kind of imposter syndrome of like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, or yeah. Yeah,
of course. It was a lot to take on because then people started to ask us questions that we didn't know about. Mm-hmm. It's just like, that's actually also a big part of City Fit Girls, is that we realized that we couldn't help everybody with what we knew. And so we actually started to visit other studios, start working with other instructors. And so we became this big thing where we had the group runs, we had our group workouts, but we also made it like a mission of ours to take other people to other studios and other gyms throughout the city to be able to help them out. And so I'm not a boot camp instructor. I can lead people on a run, but that's not like something that I'm actually good at doing. And so we would connect people with other instructors around the city and with other services. So whether it's dietitians, physical therapists, other types of workouts, we really just wanted to be like the connector, because we recognize that, whoa, this is getting bigger than what we imagined. This isn't necessarily something that we can do on our own. So we incorporated like the larger fitness community in Philadelphia to help out.
That's really cool.
And so we do the run club, we do the group fitness workouts, we partner with studios. And then the other big component is that we have a big event we do once a year, every August, called Fit Retreat. And so that's 200 women. It's a 2-day event where we do workouts, group runs, mental health, everything. And so that's kind of like our big foray that we do every year. Not this year, obviously.
Yeah, but the photos of that, by the way, I was going to tell you, are just like the energy and the like smiles that are in those pictures. Like, it made me be like, I want to go right now. Like, I want to go this on next year, I guess.
It's incredible.
But I've never seen that many, like, it just looks such a powerful experience. It was really kind of making me smile to even just look through it. So you're obviously doing a good job there.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was actually going to bring this up later in the episode, but as you kind of mentioned it already. So you said about what you went to grad school for, what you did, and kind of you mentioning about food deserts made me think about it, particularly when it comes to, you said about partnering with other people within the community. But like, I've registered dietitian, that is really expensive. Yes. Going to classes, those are expensive. Like you said, even getting good food. Philadelphia does definitely have its like pockets. Like, who do you? I mean, you weren't, it wasn't like you had an idea in mind and you kind of were like, I'm going to target this person. It did it so organically. But how did you, I guess, like roll this out as it continued to grow, with knowing that some people weren't going to be able to afford to do some of those things, assuming your group was free from the beginning, because it wasn't, as I said, like a planned thing. How did you did you feel any guilt over that you were excluding people that, wouldn't be able to afford to go see a registered dietitian or go to a class and things like that? How did you get over that?
Well, I guess I would take it a step back, just because we looked at ourselves as connectors, and we would never connect someone with a service that didn't also believe in inclusivity. And so we're talking about dietitians who may be working out of a grocery store where the services are free, or someone who might have a sliding scale practice, or make it, we would work with some of the healthcare providers, and they would show people, hey, it doesn't matter what level of insurance you have. This is how you learn how, to get these services with what you have. And so I don't think there was ever, we never felt bad about it, just because, again, we only partner with people who also believe in our mission. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then with the studios, we would do the classes often enough that even if you couldn't afford to join, get a membership at a specific studio, we offered that programming like once or twice a month. And so if you were just a person who really enjoyed the group fitness atmosphere, but couldn't afford it on your own. We didn't say, hey, you did this workout, the first of the month, so you can't come to the next one. It's no, like if you want to come and you want to do this isn't something that you normally have access to. Please join us. And so we never really had that, weird going back and forth, because we are very conscious about who we work with and deciding on partnerships.
Yeah. And I wasn't meaning that you had done that. I just wanted to kind of like, just thinking beyond it, that those two areas are very important to you. But it's the same with everyone who is listening. When people say, oh, I've heard of this great class and I've heard of this great thing, and it adds up. People can easily spend a lot of money on gyms and classes and things. So I thought I would ask
it's so expensive.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned inclusivity, and that is obviously a very important thing for you. So why is it so important for you to make sure that it is accessible to everyone and everyone feels welcomed? Like, was that something that you had experienced or heard people experiencing of not feeling that way?
So I have a great story for you. My first group run was with a running club in Philadelphia, and I went, and we had already had City Fit Girls going. And so we were doing more of the fitness stuff, but not the running club yet. And so I went to a group run, and we were running, and I was going a lot slower than the rest of the group, and I got left behind. And so I'm from Northwest Philly, and at the time, I believe I was living in the Northeast, and I wasn't really as familiar with where the group was going. And so me and another girl were just like, we don't know where we are. We don't know what we're doing. And luckily, someone had circled back to kind of come and get us. But by the end of the run, it's just like, man, group runs suck. This isn't something that I want to ever
Makes
do.
You feel bad, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I thought this was supposed to be something that's supposed to make me feel good and excited to run with people, but it had the opposite effect. And then I just put two and two together. I'm like, oh my God, we have a fitness community. Why not add a running club? And so I just wanted to make sure that people could have a running experience that was significantly better than my first group run experience. And so first run ever, our policy was no runner left behind. And that just means exactly what it says, is that if you come to this group run, and we want people to come being able to run, but even if it's at a pace that they believe is quote unquote slower, they would still be welcome to run with us.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing that, because I know many of my listeners have mentioned in the past of feeling that kind of nervousness for group runs because they've had an experience very similar to that. So you are not alone in that.
Yeah.
So then on that note, on your Run Club website, on the website, cityfitgirls.com, there's the section that says Run Club. On that page, there's kind of these like frequently asked questions. And the first ones kind of made me laugh a bit because they are kind of what we're talking about here, but they're the questions that everyone has. And these fears everyone has, but we can't seem to step beyond that. And I understand to people listening that hearing me say this, you're probably like, shut up. You have no idea what I'm talking about. So I understand that I'm never going to know what that feels like, but I do experience it every day about people saying, I'm not a serious runner. Can I join? Which was one of your questions. There was another one about fear of being the slowest. And I think there was a further clarification one that you did of like, no, but really I am the slowest. Yeah. Like, am I going to be welcome? We have to clarify so much that yes, you are welcome, but why do you think it is the case that we need to keep stating it and keep saying to people like, running isn't necessarily, I hope people have realized this year in general, but like running isn't just about speed. It isn't about being the fastest. And I hope people have realized that they don't have to even be running their fastest to be, out there running. It's about so much more than that. But what do you think will make people feel confident enough to attend groups in the future? Like, I understand that what you said earlier about some people, have had experiences like you, and maybe that would put you off, but would you encourage people to keep trying group runs, or what would you say to someone if they were going to go to a group run?
It's funny that you asked that. And, the answer, I don't know. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend people to join. I would say just group runs in general, because I can't vet for those clubs. And even the one that I went to said that it was, welcoming for everyone, but that wasn't the case. And so I do believe that the fear that people have, like, it's valid. And again, I've had the experience and I know so many others have, but I think a part of that fear is also just what we see when I look at Runner's World or like major publications, it's a very specific type of runner who is marketed to and also in the marketing. And so when you have runners who are more back of the pack or they're doing this more recreationally, they don't really feel like running is for them. And so when you have a group that says, hey, this run club is for everyone, it's like, I mean, really, is it for everyone? It's like wink, wink. And, with us, it is, but there are still a lot of group runs who say they are inclusive and they are for everyone. But when you look at, the pictures that they're posting on Instagram or when you do show up, it does not feel that way. And so I do hope that we can get to a place where group runs are a little bit more inclusive and they are for everyone, but I don't think that we're there yet. And so, no, I wouldn't just tell people, go ahead, go join your city's group run, because I don't know what that experience is going to be like. And so I think it's one of those things that us, like you having this platform, being able to just talk to people and let people know, like, if your running group has a policy that says you're inclusive, but you're going out every run and everyone's at a 7-minute mile, that is not inclusive and that is not realistic, right? But it's a normal thing. And what also ends up happening is you'll have group runs that say they're inclusive. And let's say, the group is running at a 7-minute mile. And so you'll get someone who shows up and maybe they're normally a 9-minute mile, but then they feel the pressure to do the same thing. Right. And so then it just becomes this big, all right, everyone feels like they have to go fast. And it's just like, if you just take a step back and say, hey, you know what? Can we slow down a bit? And then other people will also say like, yeah, this is way too fast for me. Right. But it's just like, because the space is like fast and because everyone feels like they have something to prove, you just create these places that are just not inclusive for everyone. And so, I wouldn't feel comfortable unless there was like a vetting process or, how we have the 3 or 4 clarifications, like this is actually for everyone. And I recognize that it's not just about that website. So we also have an email newsletter that goes out weekly where we talk about different topics that, talk about inclusivity in the fitness scene. We also make sure like on our Instagram, our Facebook posts, we're showing different people, we're showing different body types. And so just saying it isn't enough. You have to show people that you actually mean what you say when you say that your space is inclusive.
That's so true. And I think it's something that we talk about it, but we still haven't found a way to kind of, even myself, I haven't found a way to kind of get it across to people that it doesn't matter to me about pace. I quite often run with people and they always say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm slowing you down. I'm sorry, I'm slowing you down. And I'm like, no, I'm running with you because I want to run with you. It doesn't matter what pace we're running. Literally, I do not care whatsoever. But I think experiences like the one you've had have made people so insecure. And like you said, seeing those, the keeping track women, Alicia, Molly and Ro McGettigan did that study of their own about showing the Runners World covers. That just blasting, even that's taking into account race and gender and size. And like they said, it's all very much the same body every time. So of course people who are gonna feel like when they turn up and there's a group of those people there that they're not going to belong. So we definitely have some work to do within the running industry. And so if someone is thinking, I love hearing about this and I'd love to create an inclusive group, but it's very intimidating to me to think about starting something and no one showing up. And actually Alison Desir talked when she came on the podcast the first time, episode 182, I think. She talked about how she set up her group and no one came for, I think it was like 6 months. And that's kind of the ultimate fear for a lot of people who want to set something up. So based on what you've learned on your process, what would you say to someone who's going to say, you know what, I think I want to do something like inclusive in my community? What would your advice be?
The first thing would be to do your research, find out if there are already things that exist, like what you want to do. And maybe it's not necessarily you need to create a brand new thing, but maybe it's how can you help other people who are already doing the work? Yep. If you find that there isn't anything like that, and if you don't feel like you have the expertise to lead it on your own, reach out to other people, find other resources, find other ways to connect with people who may have the same mission, may have the same vision, and who also may want to do the work, just so that you're not doing this all on your own, because the truth is, like, it is hard, having to post every week, having to keep people engaged about what you're doing, having to continue to like promote and publicize. You talked about imposter syndrome earlier. Every week I would have Run Club, and it's weird that it doesn't exist right now because of COVID. But, I always say, are people going to show up to this? Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's been 5 years we've been doing Run Club, and maybe 6 now, and people show up every week, but there's still the fear of, well, this might be the week where no one comes, and you just never know. And it's one of those things that you have to be prepared to deal with, that somebody might get hurt on a run. Somebody, all these different things can happen. And if you are ready to deal with that and, continue to push forward, even when bad things happen, then I'd say, go ahead, get out, start doing the work. Mm-hmm. But if you don't feel confident enough with that, or you don't feel comfortable, then it might be better to partner with someone and offer your resources and offer your knowledge to someone else who's already doing the work. The other big thing is to take a look at leadership. And so for the sake of this podcast, if you are a person and you're interested in making an inclusive running club or a fitness group, and if you look like the people who we talked about earlier, who are always on the Runner's World covers, it might make sense to reach out to some other folks to help with the leadership, because you can't say that I'm all about inclusivity and you're the only person being represented, because that's not going to send the message that you're trying to convey. And you might have the best intentions, but visuals matter, and what people see and what you portray matters.
Thank you to Ultra for not only sponsoring me and supporting me through my running career, but also for giving it back to you every month for the rest of this year. So you have 4 more months to enter. You can enter to win a free pair of Ultra shoes of your choice. Ultra has given away a pair of shoes to one of my listeners every month for so far this year, and they have the rest of the year to go. So if you haven't entered already, you can win and pick any pair of shoes from their website. I'm afraid it is US only. But you've heard me talking about Ultra. I know you're curious about it. Those of you who have tried it have told me how much you love it, which I can't tell you how happy that makes my heart when I hear that. But I want you to continue trying it. And if you haven't yet and you've been tempted, this is the ideal opportunity. You could win a free pair of shoes. There's not that many people who have entered in the grand scheme of things when you think about most giveaways where 50,000 people enter and you're like, really? This is a pretty high odds you have to be able to win this. So go to tinamuir.com/ultra. That's TINAMUIR.com/ALTRA. tinamuir.com/ultra to enter to win the giveaway. I will be selecting a winner every month, and I would love it to be you. So go check it out. And thank you again to Ultra for sponsoring this episode and me.
You can't say that I'm all about inclusivity and you're the only person being represented, because that's not going to send the message that you're trying to convey. And you might have the best intentions, but visuals matter, and what people see and what you portray matters.
So true. Thank you for mentioning that as well, because I think that's a very important point. And I'd imagine there's a lot of people that are out there thinking, I want to do something. But as you said, it's not that you don't have the best of intentions, but it's not necessarily going to allow you to kind of access people if they don't see you following through with what you're saying. So
exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
All right. So another thing you have is your City Fit Girls Strength Club, which I love. Subscription-based online weight training and a community for $10 a month, which obviously is pretty accessible for, I would say, most people. Why did you feel that was an important element to create, and why is strength training good for women in particular to have in their lives?
So I'm not sure if you came across this, but I worked at Philadelphia Runner, which is the local running store here. Yep. So I was there for 5 years, and I mean, I've fitted thousands of people for shoes. Mm-hmm. And so one of the biggest things that, people would come in with a lot of running injuries, and the number one, reason that most people were injured is because all they did was run. And so it was either doing too much too fast, not really building up the muscles to help support their running. And I really wanted to create something to help those runners. And so, I got to the point, I'll be fitting someone for shoes, and then, I'm on the floor demoing exercises and different things like that. It's just like, all right, I have this knowledge, I have this information. I really want to make sure that one, the runners that I'm helping at work, also have access to this information, but also the women that I'm running with every week. You'd see a person show up, 3 Wednesdays in a row, and then they're gone for a month, and then they come back. You're like, oh my God, what happened? They got hurt, and they got injured. And so I really wanted to make sure that if I'm going to be out leading people on these group runs and educating runners about how to be healthy, I wanted to make sure that people had a guide and some clear answers on how to do it, because there's so much information out there about what runners need to be doing. It's like, do I need a barbell? Do I not need a barbell? Am I supposed to be doing high reps or low reps? And it's just like, it's so confusing. And so one of the reasons that people don't strength train is just because they don't know what to do, and they just kind of get paralyzed with all the information that's out there. And so since City Fit Girls was already a resource where people came for their running information, it's like, all right, they already trust us. They already know that we really, care about inclusivity and making sure that things are accessible. And so why not add this strength training component to it as well? Yeah. And so that's how that got started.
I love that. Yeah. And I love the fact that you say on there that all you need is a pair of dumbbells, a long resistance band, a mini resistance band, and a smartphone.
Yep.
Like that, even for everyone listening. I mean, now it works. Definitely, it's online, this aspect of things. So you don't even need to be in Philadelphia. So I love that. And that's very realistic for everyone. I mean, those are things that aren't too expensive, or maybe even have some, or maybe you have a neighbor who has some you can borrow and stuff like that. So I love that you've been able to give that to someone to keep them healthy, to allow them to do this thing that they love, especially when it comes to new runners. You mentioned about how you and Kara got started, and that's a perfect example of people who started kind of with the fitness aspect and then got into running. But then if you didn't have that aspect, other people may just start with running and then they don't see the benefits of that. So
exactly.
And they get hurt. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will definitely put a link in the show notes for anyone if you do want to go check that out. And you have been certified by Girls Gone Strong. Is that right?
Yep.
And that's one of the biggest strength training certifications and
for women.
Yes, for women specifically. So I love that.
But also NASM. NASM certified as well. Okay. And so I get to join all the information that I've learned from doing all these different certification programs and really just finding something that works for the average person. Mm-hmm. And so one of the biggest things with strength training for runners is that in my personal program, I do utilize barbell training. And I do think that if you have access to those tools, they could be important, but not everyone has a barbell just floating around their house.
Do you have one in your house?
I do. Wow. I do have one. I have a basement. And so I turned my basement into a gym. And so I have the equipment down there, but I recognize that not everyone has that. And so, you'll see some of the more popular strength training programs for runners that talk about, you got to have a barbell, and it's just like, that's not realistic for everybody. Yeah. And so we try to do our best with programming to make sure that, again, the items that you mentioned on the list, as long as you have those 4 things, then you can start training and you can start making sure that you're running healthy.
Well, especially right now, because a lot of people may have gym memberships, but wouldn't want to go into a gym. And so it's a bit confusing. I mean, even myself, I've been a gym person for many years, and now I'm having to renegotiate everything without a gym. And thankfully, one of my neighbors has some dumbbells I can use, but otherwise I have no idea what I'd do. So having something like yours where you can follow an instructor, follow a training program without needing all these different, items of equipment is huge. So I'll put a link to that for sure. All right. So you ready to go a little bit deeper with some things?
Sure. Let's do it.
Okay. So just doing some research on you, you were featured as one of the 15 Black fitness and health pros in Philly in the Philadelphia magazine. Now, that's obviously a compliment and it's nice to see. But, we hear about microaggressions. And is any part of that a microaggression? Because it's kind of like, we understand that we want to highlight Black voices and Black faces. But for those who are listening and thinking, well, wouldn't that almost be making it worse? Because now you're kind of like, I don't know, focusing on it. So explain that for someone who is a little bit confused by something like that when they see those kind of articles.
Definitely. I'll first say that I can't really give you like an answer on that because it's still confusing for Kiera and I to be featured on lists like that. And specifically that list, I won't get into the details of it, but that list even becoming a thing and put out on the internet the way that it was in its original form was a little problematic. And the editors did make some changes to it. And I did feel more comfortable sharing it, but it's hard because it's one of those things where we want to be acknowledged. We want people to know about the work that we're doing. So I am not like personally against lists like that, but I'm more interested in the lists that actually do the work and they're not making this a one-time thing. And so I don't want to be featured just because this is a popular trend and it's going to get you a couple clicks and then you never talk to us again because it's not popular or trendy to talk about. And so I will say that we've had a relationship with Philadelphia Magazine, in the past. And so it didn't feel inauthentic because they've written about City Fit Girls before. We've partnered with them on events. And so it felt like they meant it, but there are a lot of times where that is not the case. And so I think one of the things that you have to think about when you are putting out lists like that is one, get permission. Like it's okay to just reach out to the person that you want to write about and say, hey, like we're thinking about featuring you for this thing. Is that something that you're okay with? Because oftentimes people get excited. They just want to, highlight other people. They want to highlight Black instructors, but they don't do the work. So just putting out a list without talking to me about it first could be problematic. Okay. The other thing is when you put things out like that, make a note at the bottom. Okay, we're sharing these people with you because we want you to know about their work, but maybe now is not the best time to flood them with 6,000 questions that you have, right? It's so it becomes one of those things where, when that list got posted, let's say I got 200 new followers from it, which is great, again, because we want people to know about the work that we're doing, but that isn't the opportunity for you to slide in my DMs and ask me to teach you everything I know about racism, And so it's like, when I don't think the lists on their own are bad, it's just what happens after the list comes out and how people treat you afterwards. And so I'm being highlighted because I do good work. I'm being highlighted on this list specifically of Black instructors because our stories aren't being told, but it's not for you to just say, oh, let me go ask this Black instructor all these questions because I've never talked to a Black person before, So I think the lists are good. And when you see them, I say, go ahead and check out the people that are being highlighted. Go ahead and give them a follow. They all do great work, which is why they're on the radars to get highlighted, but don't abuse it.
Yes. No, that makes sense. And I think I was talking to Alison about this in the episode a few weeks ago about how a lot of people have kind of, when I've asked for, ideas of what things to cover, or from reading books written from the perspective of white people, like Waking Up White and Me and My White Supremacy, it's more like, hearing you need to surround yourself with people of color. You need to make sure your friendship group is expanded, but then it's people wondering, okay, but how? Alison said, just don't be weird about it. And
she's right.
That's a good message, but it's also still, I think for people who see you being featured or someone being featured, they think, oh, well, maybe this can be my friend. But they don't realize that, like you said, 200 other people are thinking, oh, she could be my friend. And how kind of strange that would feel for someone to be like me having curly hair, someone's coming up to me and being like, hey, I always wanted a friend with curly hair, so will you be my friend? And I'd be like, well, hopefully you like me for more than my curly hair. My hair, so right, exactly. It is a bit of a strange thing, and we do need to take a step back and think about that a bit more. So thank you for that. And I'm assuming, you meant about with the publications and the lists like that they need to eventually move away. It's okay to do it right now, but in the long term, it needs to be next time they do 15 fitness and health pros, including, a few of the people from the list before or different people, but making sure it is, diverse and including different people, obviously of color, but also of different shapes and sizes and genders and all the other kind of categories that people would want to feel like they were included. So that was kind of something that I noticed looking around. And then you also, you're known for your using your... Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
So I think just to kind of add on to the publications, I had got another publication, a health publication reached out to me, and it was a writer who reached out and wanted to ask some questions just about fitness. And so I was more of a voice featured in the article. And so that's one way that, if you are a publication, if you have a blog and you want to feature more people of color, you don't necessarily have to say, okay, here's 20, Black women instructors. It could just be like, hey, I want to talk to you about your expertise. And that's another way that it doesn't have to be like this big list, this conglomerate, and where you're not really getting to know the person or really allowing the person to shine and just kind of checking it off your list. Like, okay, featured Black people this month, I'm done. But no, like actually incorporating Black voices into the work that you're doing and make it, more of a normal thing. And so that way you don't have to feel like you have to put out that list of 20 people just to do that. And so not even just bloggers, but, even with podcasts, there are podcasts that I had to take a step back and unsubscribe from because I'm just like, we're talking to the same person over and over and over again. And now, and again, no offense to you or anyone else who's doing this, who's kind of like recognizing like, okay, I need to have more Black voices and I need to feature people. And so right now it feels like, all right, the next 10 people that I'm interviewing are going to be Black. And it's just like, that also kind of feels like making that same list. And I recognize that it's just kind of like making up for, all right, I've had 3 years worth of podcasts and didn't have enough. And so I think where we are today, I understand why it's happening, but I think as long as the mission is to make sure that Black voices are just included, and not just Black, but other people of color as well. Yeah. So if your plan is to continue to make sure that our voices are heard, I think it's great. I don't mind being mentioned on the list of 10 Black women, fitness instructors in Philly, but that is, I wouldn't even call that step one. That is like step 0.5. That is just doing like the very, very, very beginning of the work. And it's going to take a lot more, effort to not feel
and
like
sustained effort, right? Not
exactly.
just, yeah. And that's something I've kind of, even since I recorded the first part of my episode where I talked about that, I've been thinking a lot about, how to, the whole exhaustion that you and other Black people are facing with having these questions thrown at you. And initially I was like, okay, well, we'll just address racism for a few episodes and then I'll continue to feature voices. But then I thought, you know what, if I make episodes just solely on racism, not like kind of speaking about it so people are educated, but I was like, not only is it exhausting for my guest who already is probably having 10 of these other conversations, but then it's going to, as much as I hate to say this, it's going to turn some people off because they're going to say, okay, I'm done with this conversation. I don't want to hear it anymore, even though that shouldn't be the case. I know it would be. And then I also this is why I asked Alison for some other people. As you said, it's a lot of the same names going around. And so if you're just having the same conversation over and over again, you're going to hear it on all the different podcasts. But that's why I wanted to talk most of this episode about what you do, because that is the inspiring part, not the,
absolutely.
The fact that you speak out. Especially as someone who does that, I really admire the fact that you do speak out and kind of say your thoughts, and you're known for using your platform for good. But there's so much more to people than just kind of being an activist and being an advocate for change. So I've realized that even more since even recording that episode. So
and to your listeners who do get tired of the conversation, they're just going to have to get tired of it, because it's one of those things that, they might not come to your podcast to get these kind of conversations or, but it's a reality and it's where you are and it's what you want to talk about. And I just think that it's one of those things like people are not always going to be happy with what you're talking about. Yeah. And I don't know why this struck a chord with me, but we had our newsletter. We talk about literally whatever Kiara and I are kind of thinking about is on our mind is what we talk about in the newsletter. And when at maybe March or April, we sent out a newsletter where we were raising money for Einstein Hospital. And so it's a hospital located in like Northwest Philly. And they don't have a lot of resources, and they were looking for different fundraising like methods and just trying to get the word out, for people to give them money to help out with their COVID response. And we got a response from someone on our newsletter that said, "Oh, I don't come to this newsletter for information about race." And, and it's just like, well, lucky you, like that you don't have to have these two worlds collide. But every day that I wake up and train somebody, write a plan, go for a group run, this is my reality. I have to have these worlds collide. And so it's such an interesting thing when people are like, "Oh, I got to turn this podcast off or unsubscribe to this newsletter because I'm tired of having this conversation." And as much as I am personally tired of having the conversation,
of course.
But it's because I've been having the conversation for 32 years. And so if you are a white person who has not, you've been into this now since, May, when George Floyd was murdered, you don't get to be tired of the conversation yet. And so you should be actively seeking out these podcasts to get more information. You should be seeking out the books. And if me or Allison is on 5 different podcasts having this conversation over and over again, you should listen to it every single time.
Today, I want to highlight Harriet's Bookshop, which is a Black-owned business that was recommended by Takia. They are based in Philadelphia and they are named after Harriet Tubman. They've been hosting outdoor sidewalk sales on the weekends because of COVID, and you can support them online. So this is a great one that you can go support no matter where you are, even though they are in Philadelphia, through their online store powered by Bookshop. I will put links in the show notes to go get that. Now, many of you right now are very interested in learning more about anti-racism material, Black history, and fiction written by Black authors. So this is a great resource for you to go check out after our conversation with Takia, what we talked about with Alex, with Aaron and Joshua Potts, with Knox Robinson, and just kind of an ongoing thing. I know many of you are on this journey to become or work towards being an anti-racist, and it is a great way to support someone who is in charge of a Black-owned business, but also to get your books on anti-racism, but also your other books as well. So you can go to harrietsbookshop.com. That's HARRIETTS bookshop.com, harrietsbookshop.com, which is again named after the historical heroine Harriet Tubman, who was someone who was enslaved, and she led 19 trips to help 300 other slaves escape bondage through the Underground Railroad. So it's a really inspiring woman, a really great meaning behind this bookstore. And they have this mission of celebrating women authors, women artists, and women activists, which I absolutely love. You could also give a donation via Venmo, and you can go check them out if you are in the Philadelphia area. As I said, this was the Black-owned business that Takia herself wanted to recommend and give us the opportunity to go support. And I think it would be a great way for us all to be supportive of another Black-owned business. So go check out harrietsbookshop.com.
If you are a white person who has been into this now since, May, when George Floyd was murdered, you don't get to be tired of the conversation yet. And so you should be actively seeking out these podcasts to get more information. You should be seeking out the books. And if me or Allison is on 5 different podcasts having this conversation over and over again, you should listen to it every single time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thank you. And I do say that same message, and I've said I'm prepared to, lose people. And I have the same thing that people email you back. I get every week multiple of those saying, "I'm sorry, I don't want to listen to you anymore. I don't come to you for this, but I know that for me, this is important. And if you don't like it, find someone who does inspire you, because it's not me." So, okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So, as I said, you're known for using your platform to raise awareness. And I love that you use part of this awareness for and finding funds for underserved Philly neighborhoods. Now, can you explain to someone listening, primarily white, who would maybe struggle to understand why that would be a priority for you, and what you are doing to kind of help in the big city situations, maybe not necessarily Philadelphia, to raise awareness and to raise funds?
So do you mean just like why? Like what's my why?
Yeah, why do you do that? Yeah.
It's because it's just the right thing to do. It's one of those things where I grew up, so I'm born and raised in Philadelphia. I went to college maybe about 45 minutes away, like outside of the city. So for the most part, like Philadelphia is my home. I live here. I'm not one of those people who say, oh, I'll never move away. But while I'm here, I want to make sure that I'm comfortable, and I want to make sure that my neighbors and other people who grow up and decide to live in the city also have like access to resources that I have access to. And so I don't know. I just feel like it's our duty to do good for other people. I can't imagine waking up and, seeing someone else who may not be as fortunate and not wanting to help. So I don't know. I don't really have like a very deep why, because I'm just wired that way. It's just what I think should be done.
So for someone who's thinking kind of is maybe waking up to this situation and realizing that it's not about everything you have is just working hard. So someone who doesn't have much, doesn't have money or resources, well, just work harder or stop spending your money on frivolous things. That's obviously not the case. For someone, I know that's a loaded question. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's okay. That's okay. And so one of the things that I think that people have to understand is the history of cities. And so people don't recognize that, Philadelphia is a place that's full of colleges. And so we'll get a lot of people who move in here. They go to UPenn and they're going to Temple. And so they're kind of like on a 4-year tour, and maybe they'll stay a couple more years for grad school, and so if someone is coming in from the suburbs and let's say they went to like a predominantly white school and they never really had to be around Black people, or they've never been around places where people were low income or anything like that, they're coming into this with a completely different perspective because they haven't been exposed to what the reality of the situation is. And so when you don't have the education, if you don't understand the history of what has been going on in this country, it's very easy to say, oh, just work harder. But I know you said you read the post that I wrote on Medium.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes.
And it kind of talks about a lot of these different things. There have been policies that have been put into place since the beginning of this country's history that excluded Black people and other people of color from, quote unquote, pulling yourself up from your bootstraps. You can't do that if there's a policy in place by the government and the banks that say that your family can't get a loan to buy a house in a good neighborhood. You can't say, oh, well, just go ahead and start your own business. That's what my grandfather did when my grandfather didn't have access to funds in college from the GI Bill just because he was Black. Yes. So there are different things that have happened in history that make it nearly, I'm not going to say impossible, because there are people who, do make it out and who do good work. And, I just think people have to do more education. And so if you're a person who want to really do this work, it's beyond reading White Fragility, right? You have to make sure that you're educated on how we got here before you can even understand what to do next. Yes. And so the reason that I wrote that blog piece on Medium, I had actually got an email from a colleague who is also she's a white fitness instructor. And, she's like, I don't know what to do. And so I know a lot of Black people who feel like this isn't our work. This is not my job to educate you. And to an extent, I feel that way too. I'm also just a person who loves to educate. And so teaching is something that I am just genuinely interested in. And so, I created that resource for her originally. And it wasn't a public document yet. So it actually existed in its original form as an email with all of that information in it. Because I wanted to make sure that, I can't give you the answers of, how to not be racist or, anything like that. But before you can even do any of that work, you have to understand what is happening here at an institutional systemic level before you could go out and, claim that you're anti-racist. And so for folks who still just say, oh, just go get a better job, you have to understand why that may not be possible for everybody. And there's nothing that I can say to make a person do that. There's nothing that you can say to make a person do that. They have to want to do that work on their own.
Yes. And it is going to take up some of your time. It is going to be finding time when you feel like you already don't have any. It is going to be sitting down, reading things that are very hard to read. I mean, I'm not American, so part of me is slightly removed from it, but obviously understand that Great Britain was not exactly probably worse in the grand scheme of things, to be honest. So, you know, I obviously have my own things, but it is going to be heavy reading. It is going to be things that you have to sit and concentrate and read and really think about. It is going to make you kind of question things in your own life and things that you have done and how you have contributed. And it's going to be work, and it's going to be heavy, and it's going to make you feel, like we've talked about, overwhelmed. But then think about the fact that people have been dealing with this, like you said, since the beginning of America, since America kind of existed. So I think that's the price that we can pay right now. And yes, it does come at a very heavy time in general. But like you said, you've got to be willing to do the work. And thank you for your part in helping and not feeling that exhaustion to the point to where you just don't want to talk about it. And that's exactly why I want to use this platform. So it gives people kind of that curiosity to at least go buy the book. If you were to say to people to get one book to educate themselves, what would you say?
The New Jim Crow.
Okay. I have not read that one actually. Okay. Thank you.
It's good.
I will.
Have you seen the movie 13th?
Yes.
A lot of the, I guess, influence for that documentary.
Yeah, I think I read that. Yeah, that was very, very powerful. Very hard to watch, as was what's the Central Park one? Can They See Us?
When They See Us?
When They See Us. Yeah, that's also very hard to watch, but you know, worth watching. And Just Mercy as well, same kind of thing. Okay. All right. So let's talk about something kind of along the same lines, but slightly different. So in doing some research on you, I found a picture that had all of you, or at least you and Kiara, wearing shirts saying "Empowered Women Empower Women," which I love. Yep. What does that mean, and why do you believe that?
So specifically with City Fit Girls, we started out as a community of women who inspire other women to be active, you know, talk about mental health, have tough conversations. And so we really just wanted to create a supportive network. And so for us, empower women, it just comes from a place of building community, making sure that people feel included, making sure that people don't feel lonely, and just kind of giving women permission to help other women and not making it feel weird. Right. And so, you know, as like
threatening, right?
Or threatening. Exactly. And so it's one of those things where, like, you know, you'll see somebody on Instagram and you say, oh, like, she's doing great. And it kind of just stops at that double tap. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to. You know, you can, you know, reach out, say, hey, I'm proud of the work that you're doing, or you can support in other ways. And oftentimes, just because of the way society is, you know, it can feel kind of weird to openly support other women, which is, you know, crazy to say or think about, but it's true. And so City Fit Girls is really all about giving women permission to support other women and feel good about doing it, and making sure that they know it's something that they can do and it's not weird for us. And so even like with our run club, when we talk about No Runner Left Behind, you know, we cheer on like pretty much every person that comes running in, and we want that to be a thing that feels normal. And so even if you are the last runner coming in from one of our run clubs, it's like, yeah, look what you just did. You just ran 3.1 miles. And I don't know if that was your first time, or, you know, if tomorrow you plan to go 4 miles, but we want to make sure that you know that you're in a group of women who are legitimately excited for you and happy that you're out here with us. And so that's what that statement kind of means for City Fit Girls. And we recognize that by putting on that shirt, it's going to mean something different for all the women. You know, that picture that you saw was from Fit Retreat, right? And so it was really important for us to put that statement on that shirt, because Fit Retreat is a day where people try things that they have never tried before. And so you have women doing their first kickboxing class. You have women doing their first like weighted workouts, kettlebells, and different things like that. And again, it's just really about fostering a community and letting people know that, hey, we support you doing this. We want to see you win. We want to see you do well, and just giving permission and giving a space for that.
I love that so much. And for someone listening who's thinking, okay, but I do that, but then I don't feel like I get it back. Would you have any advice?
you can't do it for that reason. So you wanting to support and uplift other women has to be about you wanting to support and uplift other women, period. Yeah, of course, everybody wants to feel it back. And, but that can't be like your motivation to do it.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of along the same lines, what about someone who's thinking, okay, I'm starting to realize that maybe in the past I wasn't wanting to people to do well as much as I thought I was. I do struggle with kind of feeling good for people, and I'm thinking about how I can be better. Do you have advice? Is it just kind of surrounding yourself with inspiring women, or what would be your advice for someone who is kind of awakening to the fact that they maybe haven't been the best at supporting others?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely start to surround yourself with more, positive people, but also just practice being better. It's not necessarily going to be a thing that changes overnight. If you've lived with yourself for 30 years and you weren't the most positive person, that's not going to change tomorrow, right? And so you have to make an intentional effort to be better. And so you might say, all right, I recognize that this is something that I don't like about myself, or something I don't necessarily enjoy, and I want to do and be better. And so lay out the plan. Maybe that means that you have to, every day, start with yourself. Talk about something that you like about yourself.
Yes.
Usually you'll find folks who have a hard time saying nice things to other people also have a hard time saying nice things about themselves.
Sure.
And so start with yourself, and then maybe it's all right. Again, we said we don't want to be weird, and so you're not going to just reach out to strangers online. But if you have a sister, if you have parents, anybody in your family that you can just reach out to, that you already have a close relationship, practice with them. Call someone you haven't heard from in a while. There are different things that you can do to start, by supporting people. And it doesn't have to be like this crazy thing. Like, you don't have to go out, I don't know, and buy an expensive product from your friend who has a business. Like, you don't have to do things like that to make someone feel supported. And so I would just say, start small, make it a habit, and it's just going to be natural. And when you realize that you're not doing that, be able to take a step back, acknowledge if you made a mistake, if you find yourself doing something that isn't supportive, or finding yourself representing yourself in a way that you don't think you should be doing, be able to acknowledge that, have the tough conversation with yourself. And again, you got to keep moving forward, doing better.
Yes. Love that. That's great advice. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to share with my listeners? Anything else you want to tell them based on what we've talked about today, or just advice for going out into this world as a woman? It doesn't have to be about for women, like about being a woman. Okay. It could be anything.
No, I don't necessarily have any specific advice, but just kind of want to double down on doing the work. And so we kind of briefly talked about that. But I do think that if people are interested in being anti-racist, and people who are interested in running more inclusive, be willing to do the work. And so educating yourself, make sure you're reading, make sure you're watching, all the documentaries that are out there. If people of color are providing resources, webinars, different things like that, go ahead and support them in that way. Don't blow up their DMs asking them questions, because most of the people who want to be having these conversations are making accessible ways to do it.
Yeah, so they're going to address those exact questions you have, but just on a more public scale, so it's not saying it 50 times.
Exactly. So continue to support work like that. And then also a big part of this conversation is, when you see people or companies or businesses doing the wrong thing, don't be afraid to call them out on it. Because what often ends up happening is that it's people of color who are, calling out Runner's World, right? So Allison, had that whole thing with Runner's World after Ahmaud was murdered, and they didn't talk about, they didn't mention it at all. And it's just kind of weird because, when we talk about runner safety, it's something that's often spoke about. And so it shouldn't have taken Allison to speak up on that for Runner's World to do something about it. And so when we see bad things happening, or when we see corporations that we love and podcasts, bloggers, other publications doing things that you see aren't right, speak out on it. Yes. And so that would probably be my biggest thing.
Well, and that's probably going to be down the road as well, right? Because it's all right, all well and good doing it now, but then in a year's time, when the kind of, I hope the conversation hasn't died down, but when the people have said, well, I did my part for that, no more. Then is the time that you're going to notice like, hey, you said you were going to do this, but it's been, 3 months since I've seen anyone, featured a person of color or something like that. So, and then the other thing is that, you mentioned this in your Medium article, that a lot of these big corporations and brands were built a long time ago and kind of built off maybe not necessarily like slave labor or enslaved labor, but just off taking advantage, and the situation that white people were presented with that was very different for Black people. So we've got to keep that in mind with brands. They do need to be held to a higher standard, because in a lot of ways they've been trampling on people to kind of get to the top. And we know that they do. We know that big corporations trample on the little people, but even more so with this situation. So
absolutely. And from a product development standpoint, and you've been in running long enough to know just like some of the, not so good history just around like shoe manufacturing and like wages and different things like that. And so, it's one thing to be in the United States and see a company, they put up the black square and they're supportive and they're going to hire some more people of color, but like it goes much deeper than that. So, it's not just about the public facing, marketing, and you got a couple Black people on your website, but also find out how are people producing shoes, who are the workers in the warehouse, and, find out how they're being treated. So one of the things about supporting brands is just that it extends beyond who's hired in their corporate office. And so if you're really interested in doing the work and holding brands accountable, it's not just about who's in a corporate role and making sure that, they're more inclusive on Instagram. Again, just really driving home that it's so much more than that, and it's a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that people don't think about when they finally have their running shoe in their hand. They don't think about all the ways that it took to get there. And so you just want to make sure that we're not only, getting brands to talk about more inclusivity in their social media and different things like that, but and their hiring practices, their manufacturing, trade, logistics, like it's far beyond just what we see on their websites. Yes. And so we want to make sure that we're holding them accountable every step of the way, because at the very, very beginning of the process, it's usually people of color who are still being taken advantage of.
Yep. Thank you for mentioning that. Very important point. Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
I don't know how to word this without it sounding really awkward and privileged, I suppose. For women listening who are thinking, okay, I've heard this from quite a few people. I want to do the work. I don't have the time to read the books. And I would say to you, those of you thinking that, I have a 2-month-old and I've managed to read, and a 2-year-old, and I've managed to read some books. So you can find the time. You have to prioritize it. It's not easy. It may mean getting up a bit earlier. It may mean grabbing half a page here and half a page there, but do what you can. But for someone who's thinking, okay, well, I want to do the work, and I have some white friends who are doing a book club. Thoughts on that? Like a book club around one of the books on anti-racism, but a group of white women. Is that helpful to do that?
I can't really say if it's helpful or not. I guess it would depend on the individual group and what you plan to do beyond the book club. And so if, coming together with your white friends and reading this work and diving in is a way to make the work feel a little bit, more comfortable, I don't personally see a problem with that. Okay. What you do after that, if this is just an opportunity for you to gather and drink wine and, check off your list. Okay, I've done my anti-racist work for the day. That's a problem. And so if you're going to take the tools that you're learning from said book club and actually put it into practice and have the hard conversations outside of, your 4-member club, then I think that's a great idea. But again, intention is everything. And so having a book club doesn't inherently make you a better white person or a bad white person. It just really depends on what you do with the information that you learn and how you use it in real life. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, for sharing your wisdom, for educating us, for just all that you do to inspire women, particularly in Philly, but, all over the world. And hopefully we can hear some stories of people, going to do your strength training and loving it and finding it so helpful. So I appreciate you for all that you do, and keep on inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, aka iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. Really appreciate her wisdom and just all the good and the light that she puts out into the world. What a great human being, and I'm excited for you to get to know her. Go follow her if you don't already, and if you do have the opportunity to be a part of City Fit Girls, go do it. And also, as I mentioned, that strength training program is great. It can be done from home. I will put links in the show notes to that, and you can visit that by going to tinamuir.com/episode 203. You can also check out Tracksmith there and Ultra and the Black-owned business that I am mentioning in this episode. You will be able to find out more information about each of those things and get yourself some good coupon codes. Now, next week, I will be bringing on Jason Fitzgerald, who will be answering your questions. I submitted online a post where I asked for your suggestions, knowing Jason was going to be the person I would be discussing it with. This is going to be more of a fun, lighthearted, kind of more sticking to running questions that we will be answering. This is not going to be something we're going to be going deeper than running. It's going to be purely about the simplicity of running and just what we can do to make the most of our sport and keep ourselves healthy and strong. So be sure to check out that episode with Jason Fitzgerald. And I will see you next week, my friends. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.